So love seeing you all again, and I'm sure that, but maybe not everyone knows each other. So if you don't mind putting in the chat your name, your pronouns, and what place you were calling in from. Name, pronouns, what place you're calling in from, and your favorite way to spend the weekend. So put that in the chat for us. Um, Again, name, pronouns, where you're calling from, and your favorite way to spend the weekend. And we're going to go ahead and start. My name is James. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Maryland campaign coordinator. And I'm going to pass it on to our other staff to introduce themselves. So I'm going to pass it over to Jamie.
Hello, Jamie, he, him. I'm the Maryland director at CCAN, live in College Park, Maryland. And I would say my favorite way to spend the weekend is probably on a canoe trip. It doesn't happen often enough. I'll pass to Zippy.
Hi, my name is Zippy. I am the Baltimore organizer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm in Glen Burnie. And I don't know the icebreaker question. I need it repeated.
What's your favorite way to spend the weekend?
My favorite way to spend the weekend is canvassing to get out the vote.
I believe you. I believe you believe that. I didn't do my favorite way to spend the weekend. I do mutual aid deliveries in Ward 7 and 8 in DC. I'm from DC. I forgot to say where I'm from. So normally these calls are reserved for action members. Which are people who make a financial contribution to CCAN, but every now and then, and we open it up to everybody in the state because especially when there's big opportunities to mobilize people to take action. And we need ideas, we need people's support, and want to talk about what we're doing and get your input on what we're doing. So if you're not an action member, we'll ask you to become one, and that's that. So we'll be recording tonight. We'll be sending out a recording of this call in the follow-up email. So we can jump to the agenda slide. Is that where we are? I can't look at both. All right. And here's our agenda. We're gonna do some legislative updates, and then obviously y'all have an opportunity to ask questions. We're going to talk about priority campaigns moving forward into 2024 and beyond. We're talking about our electoral program launch, elections coming up, and we need to have some impact there. Zippy will take us through some deep canvassing and a plan for that. And then we're going to do a few breakouts to support our electoral program, different tactics we can use to reach out to people and build support for the candidates we're endorsing, and some local updates, special announcements, and then questions and next steps. So there'll be two opportunities to ask questions, so you don't have to get them all out the first time. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie to talk about the legislative legislative session.
Thanks, James. Legislative session is over. I am feeling good that it's over. This year I sort of said that session ending kind of feels like the feeling of taking your hand off a hot stove. It just feels very nice for it to stop because it was rough in a lot of ways. And there was kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly this legislative session, because there were some good bills that passed, but we're going to just dive really quick into each of these. So first of all, the good. And we will send these slides. You don't have to worry about writing it all down, but I just wanted to put this all here. First and foremost, an important bill passed. Chairman Wilson and Chair Feldman, the two chairs of the energy committees in the House and the Senate, introduced an offshore wind bill that allows U.S. wind to build a lot of the offshore wind that Ørsted is no longer going to build, with offshore wind renewable energy credits. It's a long way of saying it allows us to build a lot of offshore wind we thought we had lost last fall when Ørsted made an announcement that they were looking for other financing mechanisms for their turbines. So this is a good bill. We're glad it's passed. Delegate Charkoudian developed an incredible bill, the Warmth Act, that creates network geothermal pilot projects, and got Senator Hester to sponsor in the Senate, and they passed that bill. This is another, Senator Delegate Lord Charkoudian has a way of having big bills that introduce big ideas and passing them in one session. And we're just really impressed with her and glad that that one went through. It's going to take a while for that to scale up as a technology, but we're hoping that by 2045 it'll be making a big difference. Senator Elfreth and Delegate Fraser Hidalgo passed the Brighter Tomorrow Act that creates additional incentives for solar panels in Maryland. And particularly, it puts additional incentives for solar panels that are on already developed land, like rooftops and parking lots. And that's because it's cheaper to build on the ground to build solar and farmland, but a lot of people want solar not to be on farmland and would rather have it be on rooftops and parking lots. So the state is putting its money where its mouth is and saying, okay, this is more expensive, but we're going to give it additional subsidy because it's that important. But it's only a 3-year catch. So that policy only lasts for 3 years. And we are going, at least the multiplier part of it. So there'll have to be additional long-term solutions, which we will get to later in this call. We also passed the Drive Act this year that Delegate Fraser Hidalgo and Chair Feldman introduced. This bill allows electric vehicles and other batteries to sell power back to the grid at peak hours. So you could have your car parked in the parking lot if it's an electric car and if it has vehicle to grid capability, and you could actually be running a little power plant out of your car, buying energy when energy costs are low and selling energy back to the grid when energy costs are high. So your car would just be there making money for you in the parking lot while balancing the grid and reducing the need for new gas power plants to meet the growing electric demand. A very exciting bill. It doesn't cost anything. And lastly, but certainly not least, Vice Chair Brian Crosby passed the Empower reform legislation. That is a bill that aligns our energy efficiency goal program of the state with our state's climate goals. Before, Empower had been measured its success in whether it reduced enough electricity every year, but now we want to electrify everything. So we're going to be increasing electricity demand. So that bill changes Empower so that it's measured in greenhouse gas emission reductions. So this is a really big deal. These 5 bills are not insignificant. But a lot of them are just getting us back to baseline. The offshore wind bill is not building more offshore wind than we had thought we were going to build a year ago. It's sort of just correcting for a market unfortunate circumstance that happened over the course of this year. The solar bill is just trying to get us back on track for the solar goals we already have that we're behind on. And bills like the Drive Act and the Warmth Act are doing more of deploying new potential scalable technology rather than really scaling up the technology we already have and need to build more of by 2031. So other than Empower reform, I don't think a lot of these bills are actually helping us to meet our 2031 goal, our near-term goal. Right now, and we'll get into that. The bad is the bills that we wanted to pass that didn't pass, and there were a lot of them this year. This is just some of them, including the Reclaim Renewables Act, take trash out of the RPS, that is long overdue. STRIDE reform, there's a STRIDE program in Maryland that invests in new gas infrastructure for pipes every year to an incredible amount. And this would have scaled that back. The Renew Act, I think we've all talked about, would have been really important, made polluters pay for the necessary investments in climate this year. The Utility Transparency and Accountability Act, the name sort of says it, but it increases transparency and accountability in utilities. The Transportation and Climate Alignment Act, which would have required certain investments in public transportation. The Better Buildings Act was low-hanging fruit, requiring new buildings to meet their space and water heat without the use of fossil fuels, and some solar siting legislation to help balance the need to build more solar panels and protect ag land. These are all great bills. These are just some of the great bills that were introduced this year that didn't pass. And this is, this sort of graveyard of bills is happening at a time when we need additional legislation to increase the pace of our emission reductions in order to meet our 2031 goals. And then really the ugly comes in because something happened this year that we have never seen happen before. And that is the rolling back and the weakening of previously passed bedrock climate legislation. And that happened in more than one instance. The first instance is that we all together passed a few years ago the Consideration of Climate and Labor Act, which requires that all agencies and departments in Maryland must consider both climate change and labor considerations when making rulings. And the Public Service Commission last year took this law seriously and ruled that diesel backup generators for data centers should not be exempt from permitting review because they have an impact on climate change. So they were using this law kind of for the first time. But Governor Moore was upset that the backup diesel generators were not being exempted from permitting review. And so he made it one of the top priorities of his administration to pass a law exempting data center diesel backup generators from certain environmental reviews and regulatory processes. And he got that legislation passed. We, particularly with our friends at League of Conservation Voters, they were able to get an amendment on that, requiring that a certain amount of the corporate tax income from each data center has to go into the Strategic Energy Investment Fund, which is kind of like the fund where we put all the funds working on climate change in Maryland. And that'll end up being about $1 million per data center, which is not that much per data center. We would much rather not have the data centers because they use so much energy. But that amendment did get added. And it was just unfortunate to see Governor Moore use his immense political capital for rolling back and weakening climate legislation. And at the same time, he didn't have a single climate energy bill that helps solve climate change as part of his priority package. We're really hoping that changes this year, but that was the next year, but that was the case this year. The other rollbacks came through amendments to the budget. And in two different ways, they weakened the Climate Solutions Now Act that the legislature passed just 2 years ago through amendments to the budget. The first way they did it, the Climate Solutions Now Act required that the state purchase entirely zero-emission vehicles starting in 2025. Or sorry, entirely zero-emission buses starting in 2025. This year, the state passed a budget that pushes that from 2025 to 2027, which is unfortunate. You know, that's 2 more years that we'll be buying gas-powered buses that'll be polluting people's lungs. And even more troublingly, the Climate Solutions Now Act also created the Building Energy Performance Standard. The Building Energy Performance Standard requires buildings over 35,000 square feet to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions at a certain rate, eliminating their on-site emissions entirely by 2040. It's great policy. But in the last week of session, we were surprised by an amendment from leadership to the budget that essentially says that building energy performance standards can't fund certain parts of the program, including the energy use intensity, for 2 years until benchmarking is complete. This is particularly troublesome because MDE says that Maryland Department of the Environment, who's in charge of developing and promulgating the building energy performance standards, the Maryland Department of the Environment says that they can't change it at this point. They've gone through 2 years of policy design and stakeholder input, and Maryland law says that you can't make a last-minute change to the regulation and then just issue the regulation with the change. They think they would have to start over. So that would put building energy performance standards as a whole back 2 years. But even if we just take out the energy use intensity, that's a problem because as we electrify, we need to be electrifying heat pumps and not resistance heat. If we use resistance heat, which is less energy efficient, it'll make bigger peaks and crash the grid and on cold winter mornings. So this is really bad, both because it undermines regulatory process. Why should any agency spend 2 years developing a good rule if it's just going to be last minute amended and undercut by legislative action? So it sets unfortunate precedent and it undermines our policies. So that was really the ugly of the session. And I think what made the session hardest is watching lawmakers go after these policies. And this is coming at a time when we are not on track to meet our 2031 goals. This is from a report put out by the governor in December, as you can see. So on the left, we have what our emissions will do under current policies. And on the right, we have what the governor plans to do to emissions. As you can see, 2031, we are not where we need to be. compared. Current projections is that we'll reduce greenhouse gas emissions about 51% by 2031. We need to reduce emissions 60%. So we have that 9% gap we need to close. And like I said before, a lot of the big bills this year were just catching us back up to that 51 and weren't really closing that 51 to 60 gap. So next year, we need some big bills to come in and really help us meet our greenhouse gas reduction goals. And that's where I will pause for legislative Q&A.
Okay, there's a couple of questions in the chat. I think Evelyn had a great point about if we crack down on it in Maryland and Virginia doesn't, that's not going to work. But then Sister Mary Jo had the question, did those that didn't pass or were undermined have to do with the fossil fuel industry overpowering the effort?
Yes, sorry, I didn't mean to click through those. Particularly on the building side. We faced a lot of opposition from the gas industry, the gas utilities, BGE and Washington Gas. The recent report found they give more than $1 million a year just in lobbying fees. They have 71 lobbyists in Annapolis who are on their payroll in one form or another. And we're doing our own research about how much they give in contributions to candidates, and it is just an enormous number. So we've faced a lot of opposition from the gas industry. They had a lot of access to leadership that we didn't, and were able to kill bills like the Better Buildings Act without sort of showing a lot of public opposition. But those bills just never really moved, and we were never given a reason. And we know they were lobbying behind the scenes to kill them. So particularly gas industry and gas utilities were working hard against us. Delegate Laura Tarkudian is going to, or has already asked the state attorney general to look into whether the budget amendment language on the building energy performance standards is legal and could be overturned. We're hoping that it will be overturned. IPPO, what does IPPU stand for? You know, I don't even know what that orange line is.
I believe that question was answered, industrial processes and product use.
Wow, thank you for the brain trust we have here.
Yes, thank you, Evelyn. And then David asks, what is the definition of a data center? How much power do they use?
So in Virginia, data centers make up 20% of all the electricity consumption in the state. So that is a lot of electricity. At a time when we need to be achieving 100% electricity from clean renewable sources, can you imagine trying to offset all our existing dirty sources while also increasing total electricity demand 20% on top of increasing electricity demand to electrify buildings and transportation? It's just coming at a very inconvenient time for meeting our climate goals.
Rob also, so yeah, Liz was asking if there's a timeline I'm hearing back from the Attorney General.
I don't have a timeline. It's very variable how long the AG takes to respond. Could be a week, it could be 2 months. To Phil's question of which Democratic legislators need to pay the price, we faced a lot of opposition. Senator Ferguson, Senate President Ferguson, was a choke point in a lot of climate legislation this year. One interesting trend is that the House passed a lot of climate bills that then came over to the Senate. There are very, very few climate bills that the Senate passed and sent over to the House. I love all these questions.
Sorry to interrupt. There were a couple questions about the data center thing. If I could just kind of elaborate briefly.
Go ahead.
I used to work for a private company that everyone here would know the name of, that was doing a civilian government contract from a big 3-letter agency. Data center is just like a server farm. These are typically office spaces that are not set up with cubicles full of people. They are set up with racks full of servers and network equipment. It's just a lot of big computers that suck down a lot of power, and you need huge, huge air conditioning units typically to keep them at a safe temperature. So imagine just taking a size of like a Costco or a Walmart, filling it with computer equipment that sucks way more energy than your whole house many times over, and runs websites and runs programs for. We have a lot of them in the Chesapeake region because of all the DC contracts. Every three-letter agency is giving tons and tons of work to companies like Northrop and Lockheed. These companies have Costco's full of computer equipment, and they have a huge environmental impact. Why are we shying away from, why are we exempting their diesel generators? Usually it's a requirement of those types of contracts that they have backup power. So they usually have what's called a UPS, or uninterruptible power supply. So a big old battery bank. So if they lose power, they have things that are required to keep running. It cuts over to battery. The battery will drain in a few minutes, but in the back of the parking lot is a big old diesel generator that kicks on and keeps things running. And they're trying to exempt them, probably to make it easier to get those types of contract work in Maryland, because it brings tax money and corporate tax revenue, jobs into Maryland. Think about Social Security and Medicare over in Woodlawn area. Tons of offices around there. It's a lot of jobs. So maybe there's some influence from fossil fuel companies, but also a lot of it is probably Annapolis being afraid that those jobs will pack up and move to Northern Virginia. So it's, they just need to be brave enough to make the right choice from a climate perspective. Hope that answered some of the questions there.
Thanks for that, Eve. Just going through questions. Liz, I see a question of, can you remind us the status of wind energy? That's one of my favorite questions. I love to talk about the status of wind energy in Maryland. As of the end of this legislative session, the status is a company called US Wind has all their permits, all their lease areas to build 1.7 gigawatts of offshore wind in off the coast of Maryland. And that is probably going to have construction still in the water happening starting next year, if nothing else goes horribly, unexpectedly wrong. So that is really exciting. US Wind was only going to build 1 gigawatt, but this year the offshore wind alterations bill allowed them to build up to that 1.7. And then Ørsted is a company that has a lease area in Maryland, and they could build up to about like 1.5 gigawatts in that lease area, but they are looking for new financing. They were going to build 1 gigawatt with an offshore wind renewable energy credits from the state, but they said that is no longer enough because of inflation, supply chains, and high interest rates. So they are looking for new financing. Hopefully they will go through the procurement process set up by the Power Act last year. In addition to that, President Biden is issuing new lease areas for additional offshore wind, and those auctions for lease area A are going to happen this summer. And that will allow for even more offshore wind. But it's really that US wind project is the near-term future for Maryland. And I'm going to answer one or two questions more, and then we've got to move on because we've got to change the situation here and build power. And that's part of what Zippy's going to help us do.
I think Rob has a pertinent question in the chat. Do the various climate groups need to change their tactics in some fundamental way to put more pressure on General Assembly leaders and the governor? And if so, what might new tactics look like?
It's a great question. My big takeaway from this session is that we need to be doing more bills with labor. I think whenever we ask for the same thing as labor, it's much harder for them to say no. And so building those coalitions is important. And I also think that getting involved in elections is important, which we will talk about in a minute. And just to take the question about the incinerator, this year, why we couldn't get trash incineration out of the RPS, again, Senate President Ferguson really seemed to be the force blocking that from moving. And he sort of said it's because he's worried about impacts on Baltimore City. So, and Mayor Scott supported the bill in 2023, but did not support it this year, in part because I think it's an election year and he was nervous it could actually pass this year. So getting Mayor Scott to be vocally supportive of the taking trash out of the RPS would also be helpful. I'm happy to stay on more to answer more questions. I'll also put an email in the chat to answer questions, but we do have to move on because we have some actions we want to get to together. We put this slide here, just want to say next year, thinking ahead, we're going to have a 100% clean energy bill. It's too late. We should have done this before. More than a dozen states, more than 15 states already have 100% clean energy policies. Maryland needs to have one. We also need to raise new revenue. Governor's plan said that we need to be investing $1 billion a year every year between now and 2031 to meet our climate goals. We're going to use the Renew Act and other revenue raisers to get there. We've got to do that. And then we just need to really take on buildings and take on the gas industry. So those are going to be CCAN's priority campaigns, but wait to hear more on those. Now, important announcement that we are transitioning into the Chesapeake Climate Action Network Action Fund section. This is now electoral work. If you are only interested in our educational work that we do through the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, no need to continue joining. But if you are interested in taking action to turn the tide and change the game in Maryland, please stay on to hear how we at CCAN Action Fund can help get you involved. That is our important disclaimer. And I'll pass it over to Zippy.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie. I am so thrilled to talk a little bit more about our electoral campaign, and we'll start off by talking about our strategy. Why are we getting involved in politics on the electoral level instead of what we have been primarily doing, which is getting involved in the state legislative sessions. So for this, we have developed a strategy because we need to build power where we need it most, and that can't only happen during the legislative session. We need to be organizing year-round. Jamie, can you put the dots on the thing? That is not the slide we are on.
This is all I've got for this slide.
All right.
Let me try resharing. Give me a second.
It should
I
be.
see it now.
Thank you. So our strategy and theory for getting involved in the primary and later on in the general is that we need to build power throughout the year, and we need to build our list, because one of the key problems that we had in Annapolis this year is we did not, as a community, put enough pressure on our legislators to force them to take action, because ultimately they do have to take action if we build enough power. But we have to do that first by fighting to get climate champions into office and fighting to make sure that we get as many people in our community engaged in climate action as possible. And the way that we are planning on doing that is to reach out to registered voters who are in key districts for us that are important during the legislative session, and that our lists are probably need to be a little bit more robust in. And those districts are on the screen. 46, 45, 10, 8, 15, and 16 are our target districts. And essentially, by going off voter lists and focusing and targeting voters for whom climate is a priority, we will make sure that not only can we elect climate champions regularly, both to federal offices and here at the state and local level, but we'll be able to make sure that we can maintain our power after all the campaigns pack up in November and call it quits. Because we're here year-round, we keep doing the work. And ultimately, we're going to keep on doing what we need to do through session. So why this election in particular? We're getting involved in the U.S. Senate primary, and we have endorsed Angela Also-Brooks. Now, County Executive Angela Alsobrooks is the recipient of our endorsement for many reasons, but the key one I want to point out now is that she supports on a federal level the Renew Act, making polluters pay. It's a different name on the federal level, but it's the same idea, the same legislation, that we should not be paying an extreme weather tax for the destruction and the lies that have been forced on us by the fossil fuel companies. She has also already taken concrete action to move Prince George County towards 100% clean energy and has committed to continue moving towards that direction. She also supports key legislation on voting rights, which is an important issue that we named in our endorsement of Angela Alsobrooks. If anyone has more questions about, why we're supporting this candidate, we're happy to set up meetings with you and talk about it, because we're really, really passionate about electing this climate champion and we want to get you involved. But we have lots and lots of ways to get you involved. But first, let's talk about how we see this making an impact. So our Outreach and Get Out the Vote program is broken up into 4 sections. Next slide. The first section is our text program. Text has a relatively low conversion rate, but because of the nature of power texters, we can reach a large universe very quickly. So the universe size of verified cell phones in our key districts of climate-aligned voters, as well as people who voted in the Democratic primary in 2022, is 151,697 people. Given the amount of texts that we can cover, about 10,000 per person, given the response rate, we assume that we're going to need about 15 volunteer shifts to get there, and we think that we can hit 758 commit to votes from that, based on that 0.5% conversion rate. For our phone banking, we are assuming a 2% conversion rate. Next slide, please. Jamie?
It's there.
Oh,
I
Do you
see
see
it.
the next
sorry,
slide?
it took a moment to upload. We are assuming a 2% conversion rate. The total universe size of cell phones that we're targeting, it's a bit more of a high engagement list because it's harder to go through them. The universe size is 48,000. If we can hit 10,000 of them with our current capacity, I think I would be very happy with the outcome. And that assumes that we can get 20 volunteer shifts between now and May 14th. We expect on a 2% conversion rate that this will drive 200 people to get out the vote. Our next piece of the program is our canvassing. We are assuming a 5% conversion rate from the doors that we knock. Our total universe is 83,000 doors. We are assuming, based on our past efforts and given that we are starting this program from scratch, that before May 14th, we can get 15 volunteer shifts and 200 doors with 50 get out the votes. We're also looking for volunteers who are interested in clipboarding, either around universities or around high traffic areas in our key districts. We're assuming that with 15 volunteer shifts doing that, we can push 150 votes. And all of this amounts to a total commit to vote goal of 1,200 votes for Angela Alsobrooks. Now, I know that there are a lot of people voting in Maryland, but right now we have a chance to turn this race, and it could be very, very close. Internal polling from the Alsobrooks campaign puts her campaign within the margin of error, which means every vote could count. Even assuming the most extreme scenarios, this alone could make up 10% of the margin of victory for Angela Alsobrooks. Now, if you are like me, 10% of the margin of victory doesn't sound very comforting. And there are 40 of us here. And personally, I don't want to wake up on May 15th with my nominated representative being Mr. Tonal Winen. Because ultimately, we need someone who's going to walk the walk on climate instead of just talking a good game and sending out a bazillion mailers. We need people who are from Maryland, who understand Maryland, to get involved. And ultimately, I think it's understandable. We all have a lot going on. It's part of the design of why we're not supposed to get involved. It's because that's the way it's set up. It's assumed that people are going to focus on what they need to do to survive instead of what we all need to do to thrive as a community. And we're in a crunch time where we can make that happen. We can take the action that we need and do the thing that those companies don't expect us to do, that most people wouldn't do, to go out of our way to reach out to our neighbors and tell them why this is important. We so frequently never talk to anyone we don't know. And at least for me, I think one of the most powerful things we can do is knock on somebody's door and have a conversation with them and just understand what they care about and listen to them. And it's not just powerful because it can get someone elected. It's powerful because having a conversation with somebody lets them feel heard and lets them know that action is possible. And it lets them know that they don't have to sit by and let all of the things just happen in their lives. So knocking on someone's door is something that ultimately is a transformative experience, both for the person who you're talking to and for you, because it lets you know that, you know, there are people out there who care just like you. So we're going to move into breakouts. And before we move into breakouts, that was a little primer on why I like door-to-door canvassing. If you want to knock doors with us between now and May 14th, you're going to stay in the main room when we do the breakouts. But first, I just want you to hear from a couple of volunteers who have done the other things that we have as opportunities to get involved and talk about why it was meaningful to them. So first, I'd like to invite Eve to talk about phone banking for a minute.
Yes. I muted while I was in the middle of saying, can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me okay? Yep. So yeah, I told Zippy I'd kind of speak briefly on this. I have been doing the auto dialer for the last couple of weeks on Mondays. I think we call it Climate Champs on Monday evenings. So, you know, I kind of volunteered initially just to help Zippy out. We're roommates. I'm upstairs from her right now. And I just thought, you know, I want to do stuff to help out CCAN and do what I can. I work kind of a 9-to-5 job, so some of this stuff is a little bit outside the realm of what I have the time or energy to do. But I said, okay, after work, I can sit down and call people for an hour and a half. That's fine. Initially, I was a little nervous. I've never worked in like a call center or anything where I was just calling person after person. It's actually very easy. The auto dialer that CCAN sets up, I think the main two things I want to highlight is if you're worried about the tech aspect of it, don't worry. We have people who will coach you through it, tell you exactly what you need to do. You know, this coming Monday, we're, I think, expecting some additional volunteers. I'll probably help out because I've done it a bunch of times now. You do the whole thing through a web browser window. You don't install anything. You just, it's kind of like the Zoom meeting, basically. You just get your phone going. You get your audio going, I should say. And then you go on a website. The website has a script that's set up that CCAN puts together, so you don't really have to figure out that much of what you're saying. It lets you read the script before you start making any calls. So if you say, you know, a lot of times for me, I was helping with auto dialer for, what was the act that we actually got passed out of the three that we were doing the dialer for? I've already forgotten the first half of the presentation.
Power reform?
Yeah, so we did a week that was in power reform. So it was just me calling folks. I got Mr. Eckenrode on the phone at one point who was in this meeting. And, you know, I wanted to know what I was advertising. So I took a minute. I Googled it. I read about the Empower Reform. I read about, the details of the legislation because I want to know what I'm telling people to do. And once I'm comfortable with the script and I've kind of personalized it and made it my own, I'm not reading right off the page. I don't want to sound like a robot. So I get my own words behind it, so to speak. And then you click the magic button and then you wait. So for me, what that means is there's a TV over here you can't see. I've got the Orioles game on muted and I'm watching the Orioles game, and the auto dialer is dialing person after person, trying to get somebody to pick up the phone. And then you hear beep, and it says the person's name, and I say, oh, hi, Allison Smith. And then I go through the script and I say, we really need your support. Thank you for helping support climate action in the past, yada, yada. You go through the script. The worst case scenario is the person hangs up. These are not cold calls. These are, CCAN is already doing the work to make sure that this is a list of climate concerned people who have helped with climate action in the past, or if it's a voting thing, these are people who voted in the primary in the past. These are people who care, on paper at least. And so you go through, and you either get a yes from them, or you get a polite no or a hang up occasionally. And then it goes on to the next call, and it actually puts you at a screen where you can say, go to the next call, stop. And if you need a break, you just don't click the button until you're ready. So this isn't the kind of thing where it's going to just dial and dial and dial. I'll go for 40 minutes and then I'll just let it sit and I'll go and get a snack or whatever. I come back. Then I let it continue dialing when I'm ready. So it's pretty low stakes. You can stop anytime you need to. I think people hear about phone banking and it seems stressful. You're just calling people that don't want to talk to you. And it's like, no, these are climate concerned people. These are CCAN supporters in a lot of cases. These are registered Democrats who voted in the last primary. These are people who do want to help, and you're helping them figure out how to do that and helping them take action. So I honestly found it pretty invigorating. I come home from work, I'm tired. I make a couple of phone calls. I have a couple of good conversations. I also got Jamie DeMarco once. He picked up in the car. Sometimes you just accidentally do inside baseball and call somebody.
It was hands free. It was safe, I promise.
Yeah. I believe you. But yeah, it's pretty cool. We could definitely use your help. We need more people to help out with it so that we can reach out more. So stop by Monday at 5:30. We'll walk you through the technical details, and your support would be much appreciated.
Thanks, Eve. And now we're going to hear just briefly from Nicole why she got involved in our texting program.
Okay, hi. So I am Nicole. I recently got into organizing and have had a lot of trouble with canvassing and phone banking, and I still wanted to find a way to contribute. So doing the texting campaigns with CCAN, it allows me to talk with people and on a variety of issues in a very easy and comfortable way. And it's very similar to the phone banking. We do a little bit more general reach, but when you're texting the people, it's very easy to interact with them because you don't have to do it all right then and there. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to the texting breakout room.
And just to answer the question in the chat, there are no state level elections or primaries happening this year. The next state level elections, I mean, there are some municipal levels and the city level, but in terms of statewide lawmakers, nobody is up for re-election this year. So this is really the election we have to show people who endorse climate policy win elections, and we're hoping that will translate into the state level, even though this is the US Senate we're talking about.
All right, so now we're going to move into breakout rooms, and you get to choose what you're interested in. So if you're doing door-to-door canvassing, you're going to stay here with me. If you want to do the auto dialer, you're going to go into the dialing room with Jamie. And if you want to do the texting with the power texter, go into the texting room with James. And we will get you signed up. And if you don't see the link or have trouble finding the link, the links to sign up for all of these things are going to be sent out in the follow-up email along with the recording from tonight's meeting. All right, so we are going to open up those breakout rooms. Go ahead and join. We'll be back in a few minutes, and we'll talk about who wants to volunteer.
Looks like I nailed it.
So if you are having trouble with the breakout rooms, you can go ahead and just wave frantically, and I will try and help you. All right, so look towards the bottom of your screen. You should see a little 4 squares that says breakout rooms under it. Yes, no, maybe so. You should all get it. Maeve can one at a time, can people unmute and we will assign people to the correct breakout room depending on where they want to go?
Texting for me.
Okay. I will put you in the texting room.
Phone bank, Arlene.
Okay, Arlene, I'll put you in the phone bank room.
Texting for me also.
Can you say your name? Bill.
Bill, yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank
I'll
you.
assign you to texting. Is there anybody else still having technical difficulties, or do I have my door knockers? Johanna, you're still here. Did you see the join breakout room? You should have a join breakout room.
Oh, okay.
All right. Do I have door knockers? Hello. It is so good to see you all. I am so excited that you are looking to get involved in door knocking. We are really thrilled to get our program started. We are going to be doing door knocking trainings one by one. So I am going to meet with everybody who's doing canvassing. Currently, we have canvassing times that are assumed to be on weekends. I'm dropping the link in the chat. So we picked Sundays, and we have 2 shifts from 12 to 2 and 2 to 4. If you want to do other times, you can go ahead and you can let me know, and I will expand the I'm happy to expand the calendar. I think knocking on weekends is typically the most effective. Has anyone door knocked before? Great. Used minivan before? Okay. All right. So minivan is an app that we use to direct you to the people who we have targeted as likely voters. And we have the script laid out in it, and you can record people's answers without having to write anything down. It saves us all the time that we used to use transcribing paper lists. It's a really, really effective tool. It takes 10 minutes to learn how to use, and I will buy you coffee and teach you how to use it. So just like off the cuff, who here thinks that they can commit to weekly canvassing through May 14th?
Zippy, could I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Hey, is this only like canvassing in those specific districts that are the target districts?
So those are the districts for which we are mounting coordinated in-person canvasses. If you are elsewhere in the state, I am happy to cut you turf.
Yeah, I'm elsewhere in the state, and I've heard so much talk lately within the Democratic Party about in favor of David Trone, and that is not really where not really who I want to support. So, I would be possibly interested in doing some stuff just in my district, but I don't think I have time to be traveling around the state. But
Totally
I could do some
understand.
things, just maybe locally.
So where are you located?
I'm in Bel Air, Maryland, in
Okay.
Harford County.
Harford County?
Yeah.
I'll come to you. I'll cut you turf up there too. Also, in are you? I'm not sure which part of Harford County Bel Air is in. If if it's the part that's close to North Baltimore County.
Well, we should talk about it.
Okay,
'Cause
yeah.
it's probably not worth a lot of your time because I'm not going to be, devoting a lot of time to this. I don't have a lot
It'll
of
take me
time.
20 minutes to cut you some turf.
Yeah, but maybe we could just talk virtually, or talk by
Yeah,
phone or something. I'll put my
exactly.
I'll put my
So go
phone in
ahead
the
and
chat.
click the link and sign up, and it'll give you a Zoom, and I'll train you then. If you actually, I'm putting in a second link. This one has my complete availability on it. If anyone needs to schedule a meeting or a training with me for anything or just wants to talk about climate, like that's the link to click. Yes, Katie.
I need to talk to.
Hi. Yeah, the link I clicked, it said it wasn't valid. Was anyone else getting that, or do I just need to try it on a different device?
Same
No,
thing
I was
happened to
getting that
me.
as well. Yep.
Okay, that is
The first link, that is. I
all
didn't try
right.
this the second one.
I guess Rebrandly doesn't work for Calendly. Just give me one moment. I'll pull up the Calendly link. Oh, I see the problem. Sorry, just give me one moment. I'll fix the link. There was an extra dash at the end when I rebranded it. Thank you for your patience. There is a lot going on right now. Eileen, you had a question? You're muted.
Yes, trying to get in off. Yeah, I don't know I'm in Silver Spring. So I don't know if I'm local to these districts or not.
So 15 and 16 will probably be closer to you.
Okay. Where are they?
They're in Western Montgomery County, I believe. I'm the Baltimore organizer, so you'll have to forgive my
Okay.
unfamiliarity with the geography of the rest of the state.
Okay.
Uh,
That's what I wanted to know. I can do that. I don't know if I can do every Sunday, but I'm gonna.
That's okay. And I will also say, so part of what we're doing is the weekly canvassing, but in the last 4 days, we will be doing extended shifts. We will be handing out. Can you try the URL again? We will be handing out door hangers with get out the vote information. So our strategy is to text the universe really quickly, find out who supports Angela Also Brooks, and then target them during the 11th to 14th with door hangers to make sure they get out. And we'll provide the door hangers. If you're in Silver Spring, I can pop over from Tacoma Park and drop them off. I'm there once a week.
The link seems to work now.
I'm so thrilled to be doing this with you all. Other questions, thoughts, people want to say what they're excited for. Yes, I'll drop my email in the chat. Sippy@chesapeakeclimate.org. Spelling in the chat. First letter is like a hi-hat on a drum kit. Sippy.
Question, does it, like, I don't see the location on the schedule thing, so like, do we sign up and get told where to go later?
So your location is going to be depending on the turf that you are knocking in. So you will get a list number from me. You'll plug that into the app. It will give you a list of addresses that you'll be able to map to.
Okay. Are there going to be, I don't know where the districts are either. Forgive me. Are there some in or near Baltimore?
Oh, yeah. 4 out of 6 of them are Baltimore City and County.
Cool. All right, cool. Thank you.
And we're starting off in District 46, which may or may not be Senate President Bill Ferguson's district. All right, thank you, Tracy. Oh, I already missed her. All right, I think people are coming back from the breakout rooms. Thank you all so much for agreeing to door knock, and I'm so excited for others to agree to door knock too, which I am, just hoping people decide they want to do after getting involved in other ways. Welcome back. Welcome back. I hope everyone had a great breakout. I hope everybody is chock full of shifts that they are signed up for. We'll give it a minute and then we will do report outs. Maeve, if you can just go ahead and close the remaining breakout rooms. Actually, it seems like there's still a bunch of people in them. Let's give it another. Let me ask. Are people coming from the other breakout rooms? Can I have news from the faraway lands? All right, breakout rooms closing in 60 seconds.
And they return.
I hope you all take time during this big fight for climate every day to just be a little silly.
And I'm going to say that since it is 8 o'clock, I think we're going to have to skip report outs from the breakouts. But thanks very much for the folks who signed up. Please do invite other people to join you. And we have a very important thing to say, which is that we lament to share that James Brady is going to be leaving CCAN at the end of this month. So this is actually going to be his last MMU. He's acting like he doesn't know what I'm talking about.
This is how you tell me? This is how you tell me? I'm kidding.
A classic James bit.
I'm just joking.
James is going on to do additional direct action, nonviolent direct action, as is his heart and soul. And we are so appreciative for the work he has done for CCAN. Let's just give a round of applause for James and give him a shout out in the chat to thank him for the great work he has done for CCAN, helping to get Climate Solutions Now Act and many other bills passed.
Thank you all. It's been a real pleasure. I had a one-person short one-act play and a musical presentation planned, but we kind of ran over schedule, so I'm not going to do the modern dance tribute to CCAN. But I've had a wonderful time, and it's been wonderful working with all of you. So, and yes, stay in touch, Rob. I will, for sure.
Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone. Onwards.